My topic of discussion is the 13th Amendment. On January 1st, 1863, Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which declared that all slaves in areas under Confederate control shall be forever free. Lincoln had come to believe that freeing the slaves would break the backbone of the Southern economy. The proclamation did not free all the slaves in the United States. On December 18, 1865, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the nation. In 1863, based on his war powers, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed the slaves held within any designated state and part of a state in rebellion against the United States. The proclamation provided all persons held as slaves are and henceforward shall be free. Because the proclamation did not address slaves held in the northern states, there were questions about its validity. Following the end of the fighting on February 1st, 1865, Congress passed the 13th Amendment and forwarded it into the states. It was ratified on December 18, 1865. The 13th Amendment was the first of three Reconstruction era amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th, that eliminated slavery, guaranteed due process, equal protection, and voting rights to all Americans. The 13th Amendment declared that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States, or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Formally abolishing slavery in the United States, the 13th Amendment was passed by the Congress on January 31st, 1865, and ratified by the states on December 6, 1865. By its adoption, Congress intended the 13th Amendment to take the question of emancipation away from politics. The Supreme Court found in Rees-Slaughter House cases that the word servitude is of larger meaning than slavery, and the obvious purpose was to forbid all shades of conditions of African slavery. Although some may have questioned whether persons other than African Americans could share in this amendment's protection, the court held that the amendment forbids any other kind of slavery, now or hereafter. In more recent cases, the Supreme Court has defined involuntary servitude broadly to forbid work forced by the use or threat of physical restraint or injury or through law. But the Supreme Court has rejected claims that define mandatory community service, taxation, and the draft as involuntary servitude. Some factors leading up to the Emancipation Proclamation. Many people believe that the Emancipation Proclamation issued on January 1st, 1863, freed all the slaves in the United States. Actually, freedom did not come to all slaves until the passage of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. Abraham Lincoln opposed slavery, but he had been elected on a platform that promised not to interfere with slavery within the slave states. During the Civil War, his primary aim was to save the Union. He first issued the proclamation in rough form just after the Union victory at Antietam in September of 1862. It declared that all the slaves in the Confederacy were free, not those in the loyal border slave states. At the time, Lincoln had no power over the Confederate states, but nearly 200,000 slaves went north as free men and joined the Union Army. The proclamation also identified the Union's cause firmly with the fight against slavery. Some questions that one would ask themselves in reference to the proclamation would be, how did people react to the Emancipation Proclamation? What did the proclamation state? Why do you think the Emancipation Proclamation freed only those slaves living in the Confederate States? How did Lincoln decree granting freedom to Southern slaves benefit the Union cause? Important dates associated with the Emancipation Proclamation: April 16, 1862, Lincoln signed the D.C. Emancipation Act, allowing for the emancipation of all slaves within Washington, D.C. September 22nd, 1862, Lincoln announced his preliminary proclamation, a military warning that if the war continued and states remained in rebellion, he would free all slaves held in rebellious states on January 1st, 1863. The war continued, and on for the first day of 1863, Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. December 6, 1865, legal emancipation for all enslaved people of the United States was ratified by the 13th Amendment. The most famous and probably the last place in the former Confederate states in which the Emancipation Proclamation took effect was Galveston, Texas, where on June 19th, 1865, General Gordon Granger read a military order announcing that all the slaves in the state were free according to the Emancipation Proclamation. The date has come to be celebrated as Juneteenth. Thank you.